Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Samaan, and today we're talking about the 4 Ds leading to depression. I'm sure all of you have experienced a little depression in your lifetime. We all have, just in and out sometimes. Sometimes it's a little worse for some and not so bad for others, and it gets even worse. But tell me, does this sound familiar? Must I forever see these evil deeds? Why must I watch all this misery? Wherever I look, I see destruction and violence. I'm surrounded by people who love to argue and fight. The law has become paralyzed, and there's no justice in the courts. The wicked far outnumber the righteous, so that justice has become perverted. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, that wasn't part of the presidential debates going on at this time frame when I'm recording this, but it sure sounds like everyday stuff around here in this country and in other countries. In fact, this was written maybe roughly 2,600 or so years ago. Habakkuk in the Bible. Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 3 to 4. I guess these sort of things been going on for a long time. Wonderful thing about Scripture is it tells it like it is. It doesn't hide it. But as I was writing this, I was thinking, I wonder if this has anything to do with prophecy concerning the future, because it sure hits the mark for today, doesn't it? All this stuff going on around. I got people in counseling who they just won't even turn on the TV. It's upsetting. It's depressing. I've got those who they won't watch the news. In fact, I'll suggest they not watch the news if they have some issues that perhaps the stress of watching the news might make them a little more upset or a little more moody or anxious or whatever it might be. That's stress, and that's hitting you every day, every day. Each person handles that a little differently, but over time, it wears you down, doesn't it? So today we're talking about the 4 Ds leading to depression. I was sitting there writing this and I was thinking, how shall I put this? There's so much to talk about with depression, and we're approaching it, of course, from a faith-based perspective, and I hope you will look down and like if you find this interesting, and subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. But down there you'll also find some more information about depression. But when I was sitting there writing, and I was thinking, well, all right, let's put it together in a way that is easy to comprehend, but also kind of puts it all together. Because it can get so scattered when you try to take a big subject and only have a few episodes in describing it. And as I was looking at some of the words I was using, I realized that I had a lot of D's in there, letter D's, and I said, wow, maybe there's a pattern there. And I looked at the pattern and I saw, wow, there's 4 D's to depression: difficulty, discouragement, distress, and despair. And when you look at each of those D's, well, that pretty well covers depression. So we're going to talk about those. And today we're starting with difficulty. We all have difficulty. I guess we could call it stress. Difficulties of life, challenges, work, school, relationships. All those things intensify as we get older because there's more responsibilities, more expectations, more goals to achieve. And what does that do? It drains your physical energy, but also drains your mental energy. And when you're young and you got all that energy, you're going full steam. But as the years creep by, that depletes that inner energy oftentimes, and so we have to try to replenish it somehow. We replenish it by eating right, exercise, taking supplements, herbals or medicines if needed, and other things. Certainly for me, prayer, going to church, or even watching church on TV, getting that battery charge helps to recharge me. But I'm still getting older and the energy drains a little bit more. So those extra efforts, well, I got to work a little harder at this. I have to focus more on that, or this needs attention. That extra effort, it kind of takes away also some more stuff from inside of you. I used to think when I started counseling many years ago, when I would have an intense session, it felt like at the end of the session that just a little piece of my life was drained away. Maybe 5 minutes or so at the end of your life, it's a little less than, it's maybe 5 minutes less, or however long it might be, because of that intensity of the moment. That's just counseling. Can you imagine what it's like when the real life stuff is going on? You know, I'm reliving that real life stuff in my head as I'm hearing stories, and that intensity in my head, and I have an ability to take in and seeing what's happening and feeling what's happening, so I actually feel it. Can you imagine being in it? And some of you have been in traumas, and how that drains you. Well, stress increases that drain. We think of common things like post-traumatic stress disorder. Somebody was talking the other day about something, a series they were watching on TV, very intense series, and I knew the series they were talking about. And I realized, based on some of the words that were being said, there's some signs of PTSD there in that person from watching a program on TV, an intense program, and based on real life stuff. It can happen to you just watching TV. So stress increases, drains us even more. It's like swimming upstream against an increasingly strong current. And you have those that are strong-minded, and they're going to intensely swim even harder against the stream of popular opinion. You have those that might be weaker in that area, and they're just going to go with the flow. You got those who are just going to swim to the side and get out. But whatever they do, it's decreasing that energy, making life a little more difficult. When we step out into the world with the freedom of making our own decisions, our responsibilities grow. Can't be helped. You can not work, you can live in the woods, you can be a hermit, but the responsibilities are going to grow. They may be different, they may be less in one way, more in another way, but the tendency is, as each year goes by, it wears you down, and that mental energy is important to doing those things you want to do every day. So when we venture into life, out of high school, perhaps you've been to college, or perhaps you went right into the workforce, you start at the beginning of that ladder. You start at the beginning of responsibilities. And we all come out of a phase of our teenage years that I call our narcissistic phase. And I see all, if not most, teenagers as showing a lot of narcissistic traits, that entitlement, lack of empathy, idealistic. Relationships are blown up to be much better than they really are. And anger, and they want things yesterday. We all went through that. But we outgrew it as we were getting 18, 19, 20 years of age, early 20s, facing the true responsibility, the real life. Our idealism decreases. We start seeing things in somewhat of a more realistic perspective. And with each step of that ladder, going towards improving ourselves, improving our lives, we feel that ever-increasing pushback, as if gravity is resisting our climb upward. And so it gets a little harder. For some, maybe they might feel a little easier because they have certain talents and they just ease into things, but eventually that gravity presses them down, makes it just a little more of a struggle. The pushback of stress-related difficulties entails a lot of different things, but if you could just think of your life, what were some of the pushbacks that you received in your life? What were some of the things that made it just a little more difficult? I remember on the beach where I grew up in Daytona Beach, we'd walk along the seashore and we'd get some exercise doing that. So we'd walk where the water was about maybe a little more than ankle deep, maybe calf deep, and that resistance from the water, well, it was good exercise and it felt good. But by the time you were going about a mile or so, your legs were tired and you were kind of getting worn out, and okay, I'm gonna walk on the beach now. And it was good for you, and as you know, as the muscles grow, there's pain. Well, that resistance is in every facet of our life as we go through life. Your teacher at school, your boss at work, making and maintaining close friendships. Wow, for some people, that is very hard to make a friend and very hard to keep friendships. For others, let's say extroverts, for example, oh, much easier. It's like water rolling off a duck's back. Well, no problem. They can't understand why you'd have a problem making friends and so on. But for many, it's a real struggle. And so one friend might be enough for them. So a loner, especially if they're a compulsive loner, may only need one friend. But unfortunately, everything relies on that friendship because they know the struggle of trying to get another friend, trying to make another friend. And so more expectations are there in that friendship, draining that energy. You remember dating when you were young? That took energy, didn't it? A lot of thinking, a lot of planning. For some, no problem at all. For most, well, they had to think through it and work it out. Matrimony, children, boy, that's stress. That's difficulty. Family, keeping up with the family, keeping everybody happy in the family. Activities, different activities that you may take part in, all takes planning, energy. Self-care, you got to take care of yourself. I call others care, helping others, taking care of the needs of friends and associates and so on. Bill paying, that's a big one. We all go through that one. Financial difficulties, because after you pay the bills, then you're thinking about those financial difficulties. Weight pushing you down, job changes, conflict resolution, resolving those problems, problem solving with people or with situations, deal making, Understanding. I got to stop for understanding. Some people don't bother understanding. They're not empathetic, or they don't care, or they're just thinking about themselves, so they're very self-protective, selfish. They don't focus that much on understanding, but they have to over-focus on those other things. Whereas the rest of us, we're focusing on trying to understand, why don't you like me? Or what is your problem? Or what's happening that's causing you to do this or that? If we take the time to try to understand, it helps us to get along better, and it helps us through a lot of difficulties. And oops, pregnant again? Oh, wow, that last one, it's a lot of times I hear this, it was unexpected. But it happens, and the joy of a baby is a great satisfaction. Once you get over that initial oops, babies are wonderful, and every baby is a blessing. Moving, got a new baby, got to get a bigger house, or not moving, remodeling, that's stressful. Sometimes remodeling is more stressful than moving. Aging parents. I'm an aging parent, and the list goes on and on. That's a great bonding exercise for you and your partner. Sit down and write down together those things that push back at you from childhood on, or if you want to start from your marriage on, or you want to start anywhere along, make a little list of it and date the list. And as you look back, it's interesting to see, but also it's great bonding together because you're hearing some stories you never heard before. You're going deeper into that relationship together, even if you've been married many, many years. Here's a scripture for you. Because in faith-based counseling, we're addressing spirit, soul, and body. If you address all three, we got a better chance of improving, of healing, of going forward, and a better chance of tearing down strongholds, as the Bible would put it, those unresolved things of the past. And in James chapter 1, verses 2-4, it says this: Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity of great joy. Now that's important. I'm going to pause there for just a minute. When I'm coming against something, and I'm getting a strong pushback, first I go to God. Okay, what's happening here? What are some insights you want me to have about this? What are some understanding? What are you teaching me about this? So I'm looking at it from a learning perspective, but also I'm addressing this seemingly very difficult wall, whatever you might want to call it, that I've got to get around, or I've got to get through somehow. And I look for one good thing in that situation. And then when I find that one good thing, I thank the Lord for it. You might have a higher power. You might be of another faith. Irregardless, the principle is the same. Truth is truth. The things that are true work, and they always will work. Find that one good thing and focus on that one thing, and then ask, in your faith, your higher power, in my faith, I ask God through Jesus Christ, what do you want me to see that's one good thing out of this? And thank you for that one good thing. So consider it as an opportunity, the scripture is saying, for great joy. Oh, great. Another red light. Okay, Thanks, Lord, for slowing me down. One good thing. Probably there's going to be an accident if I kept going, or something else might happen, or you want me to get to a place a little later than I'm supposed to. Thank you. Whatever it is, I'm accepting it by faith. I'm going to take a deep breath and relax. And the scripture goes on to say, for you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. Just what we were talking about, difficulties, stress, that pushback, wearing you down. And what is the scripture saying? For you know that when your faith is tested, so these things that are pushbacks, find that one good thing. Well, one good thing certainly is looking at it as I'm being tested. There's a trial. There's difficulties being presented to me that if I take it with faith, trusting in my case, God through Jesus Christ, I can relax, I can think better, I'll make it through it with His help. And in doing so, I'm increasing my energy, my endurance, as it says here in the scripture, a chance to grow. So let it grow, the scripture says, James says in writing this. For when your endurance is fully developed, you'll be perfect and complete, needing nothing. Now, that's also talking about eternity, that perfection and completeness that comes in eternity. But it's literally true that if we do these things, we're going to be a whole lot better than we were before. And if depression, difficulties are increasing that depressed, that sadness, that moodiness, or whatever it might be, and you approach things this way, wow, it lightens things up. And as we've spoken about in the past episodes, the proteins in the brain, the enzyme that produces when you think good thoughts, not bad thoughts, not negative thoughts, not critical thoughts, good thoughts, those good proteins are developed bathing, nutrifying brain cells and circuitry, neural pathways. Actually causes your brain to grow, to become stronger. Memories actually become easier to access. All sorts of good things that we've spoken about in the past. Go back and look at some of those descriptions and explanations about the brain and how God designed us, and how now in research they're finding that to be true. So if you have a Bible, but go to James, that's in the New Testament, read chapter 1, verses 2 to 4, just what I'm reading here. Perhaps read on, there's probably a few more things in there that are going to be right for you. In our next episode, we're going to talk about discouragement, the next D leading to depression. I hope this was enjoyable for you. Like us if you found this interesting, subscribe, hit that bell button, and you'll get notified for the next episode. So long. God bless.